I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
I think once I saw my first Olympic Games and registered what that was, watching Kristi Yamaguchi win the Olympics, I wanted to be at the Olympics one day. Even didn't fully understand what it was. I just knew that this was when the whole world stopped to pay attention and pay respect to the athletes. There was a magic around the Olympic Games.
Okay, but a million young girls saw Kristi Yamaguchi win and think to themselves, boy, I'd really like to be in the Olympics for ice skating. What do you think made you a little different?
I think I have a laser-like focus when I find something that I'm interested in, and I just latch on like a dog and I don't let go, and I'm just obstinate, and it just repeat. And that's what I found with ice skating. I wanted to go back for lessons, and it just became obsessive. And for me, it was wonderful because it just felt right. I felt at home, and it gave me something to apply myself towards every day, and this incredible sense of purpose. What's so painful about the Olympics is you have a few-minute window every 4 years, and you just hope that it's right. It's like the eclipse, that it happens at the right time for you when the Olympics is there.
We're going to get to the 2006 Olympics, believe me. Sasha Cohen, world-famous ice skater. I can't even go over all the medals you've won, but you won the Nationals a billion times. You've won medals in all sorts of tournaments. You were a silver medalist in the 2006 Winter Olympics. You totally reinvented yourself after your amazing ice skating career. You went from, and I'm going to miss some steps, but you went from ice skating to, I feel like you were figuring it out with fashion and acting, and now you're in the investment banking world. You work at Morgan Stanley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. You've done very well with 0 notes. I'm impressed. I have made quite a few leaps and transitions. Acting, I was at 60 Minutes before I came to Morgan Stanley. I was at a small startup. So I've been doing a little bit of trial and error, but it's been a good learning process.
Well, when you say trial and error, and I want to get into the ice skating and how there's so many things I want to cover. So I want to cover basically how to be the best in the world at something, which you clearly were at ice skating. Then I want to go from how do you go from these super highs to figuring out, oh my God, it's the age of 25. I can't be the oldest professional ice skater in the world. I got to figure out the next thing. Like, that is a process that took a decade. And And then, but I didn't know what's the small startup that was before that you were involved in.
I was working at Zig, and I was the third employee. It's kind of a cross between. It's like the Instagram of news, basically, where you could follow events or people in real time, and it would aggregate every news publication globally on a person or topic you're interested in. And it was a really cool experience. I got to wear a bunch of different hats, being the third employee. Ultimately, there were some fundraising pauses, and I went to 60 Minutes, which was an incredible experience.
When you say you went there, it wasn't like you were an intern there, where you were. What were you doing there?
Well, I wasn't running it. I was a research associate, and I helped with the opioid crisis story, which was incredible. I was cold calling the pharmacists and trying to track them down and get them to talk to us. But it was, I did a lot of different things, from finding tape for different episodes, and I got to see the process of how segments were put together and how to really eliminate bias. Because battling the right and left, 60 Minutes really tries to kind of like walk this straight line and give news to America. And I was kind of on the receiving end of getting emails, and no matter what you would do, everyone would think it was biased to either the left or the right. So I got to see a lot of different angles of how 60 Minutes puts their shows together.
It's so interesting because related to this, if I say an opinion out loud that someone disagrees with, if they're a Republican, they think I'm a Democrat. If they're a Democrat, they think I'm a Republican. Like everybody
You can never win.
Yeah, you can never win. But at the same time, bias is hard to eliminate from the news. Even though this is a total tangent from your whole story, I mean, Fox News is biased one way, MSNBC is biased the other way. They're clearly biased. They kind of define themselves now by their bias. How do you really eliminate bias?
I think certain channels definitely cater to a certain audience, and I think 60 Minutes really tries to be as straight as possible and not insinuate anything. But I think it's difficult because everyone is seeing the news through their lens and their personal experiences. So anything can seem like an affront. If you go from watching Fox News to watching 60 Minutes, it seems like it's way left, right? And if you go from watching CNN to CBS, again, you're feeling like it's not representative of what you've been hearing. And so it is a fine line. I think the best thing everyone can do is just watch everything, so you can just see that everything is a version, and you have to do your homework and not reinforce the feedback loop.
Well, I might get back to this because it's such a fascinating topic, but I do want to get to ice skating and your rise up to the 2006 Olympics. I know as a young girl you started as a gymnast, and you switched to ice skating, then you got much more interested. What was the thing? What was going on in your life? Were you like just this incredible natural athlete as a 3-year-old, or what happened?
I was basically the most hyperactive child, and I destroyed the house, and my mom decided to put me in gymnastics for 3 hours a day to use up my energy. And my family got a docile, well-behaved child. And from there, I started ice skating because a friend of mine in gymnastics skated, and I fell in love with it, just the speed, gliding, and for a while I did both.
How much do you think in that very beginning period there was natural talent versus skill?
I don't know if I had a lot of natural talent. I think I had a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy to burn.
Would you argue that somebody is probably talented at the thing they have most enthusiasm for?
It's possible. It's possible. I think everything I have is experientially is within sports. And I think, again, I'm trying to carry that over and find that in the real world, which I find is a little bit more difficult. But I was a super hyperactive child. I loved to run, climb trees, cause trouble. And so when I found gymnastics as an outlet and then skating as an outlet, it allowed me to develop myself athletically and then also artistically, because skating is a sport where you pick your music, you design your costumes, you train to be at the highest level you can be, and at the same time you have this incredible structure of a 1-year plan, a 4-year plan for the next Olympic cycle. And
were you thinking that early, like Olympic cycles?
Pretty early. I think once I saw my first Olympic Games and registered what that was, like watching Kristi Yamaguchi win the Olympics, I wanted to be at the Olympics one day. Even didn't fully understand what it was. knew that this was the important thing. This was when the whole world stopped to pay attention and pay respect to the athletes. And there was a magic around the Olympic Games.
Okay, but a million young girls saw Kristi Yamaguchi win and think to themselves, boy, I'd really like to be in the Olympics for ice skating. What do you think made you a little more different?
I think I have a laser-like focus when I find something that I'm interested in, and I just latch on like a dog and I don't let go, and I'm just obstinate, and it just repeat. And that's what I found with ice skating. I wanted to go back for lessons, and it just became obsessive. And for me, it was wonderful because it just felt right. I felt at home, and it gave me something to apply myself towards every day, and this incredible sense of purpose.
It sounds like also your parents, you had a lot of help along the way. Like no, it's the whole thing, no man's an island. But like you were essentially homeschooled. I'm assuming
from the age of 12, yes.
From the age of 12, I'm assuming because your parents were very supportive of your efforts to be single-minded in this focus of getting to the Olympics. Were they like, annoying ice skating parents, or where's the spectrum of them being supportive to being too much on this side?
I think my dad was in his own world, and my mom was very supportive. She spent, most of her day driving me between school and the rink and ballet and Pilates and physical therapy and costume designer. So she gave up her life to support my dream. And I, as an 8-year-old, you can't do that without a parent to put in that kind of time.
What was the indication at 12 that you might have a shot at being the best in the world?
I made it to nationals at the age of 12, but 5 levels below the senior level, which was where you need to be to compete for a spot on the Olympic team. And so at that time, there's promise, but there's hundreds of girls that have promise, and you don't know. And I guess when I was 17, I made my first Olympics, which was in Salt Lake City. And but even going in, it's your body is so fickle. Sports are so fickle. Timing is fickle. You see gymnasts and they win one Olympics and they're not there 4 years later because their body has changed or they're injured. And so you just never know. The year before the Olympic trials in 2002, I had broken my back and I missed nationals completely.
Okay, you'd broken your back.
I did. I had a stress fracture in my back.
Damn, a year later, I can't ice skate as much. Like, what happened when you broke your back?
I had a bone stimulator. I had to take 3 months off.
How did you break your back?
Through falling, just repetitive stress on the same point from like landing jumps and layback spins where you basically bend yourself in half. And I was growing at the time and it just kind of whacked everything out of place.
So how old were you when you broke your back?
15 and a half.
So if I was, let's say, doing something and then broke my back doing it, I would never do it again. Why did you decide, I broke my back and was almost paralyzed for life, and not to, in addition to all the trauma of just even looking at an ice skating rink and remembering?
Because once you understand what the Olympics are and what they mean, it's consuming. There's nothing else.
Was your love for getting on the Olympics more important than your love for ice skating or fears about your health?
Olympics was tangled up with ice skating, but it was just this incredible frustration with my body for not cooperating and knowing that you have to be patient enough to let it heal, because if you try to come back too soon, you're sending yourself back. And that's the biggest push-pull and this painful internal struggle, because when you can't train because you have to heal, so you're just in your head 24 hours a day.
So you're thinking at age 15, oh my gosh, I'm losing ability. I'm losing that chance.
I'm losing time. And how many, the Olympics are 471 days away. It's just, you're literally counting down and you're watching videos. You're seeing your competitors continue to progress while you're off the ice. And it's all consuming and you're kind of freaking out because you can't do anything. You just have to sit with those thoughts and wait.
I mean, after you broke your back, and by the way, I don't even know what happens when you break your back. Like,
I had a bone stimulator. I couldn't put pressure on my right side. I had incredible sciatica, and I had to have a bone stimulator and not move it and not have any impact and not do any contortion moves, which is skating is half of that, what I did. So it was
And
incredibly
particularly, I should say,
frustrating.
your style, and I'm sorry to be an interrupter, but particularly your style is heavily contortion oriented, just from what I've watched. So obviously you went full force into that after breaking your back. But like the moment you broke your back, again, I've never met anyone who's broken their back. Did that moment hurt incredibly? Which might be a naive question.
So it was something that happened over time. So it's like you feel you feel a twinge of pain, which gets more and more until you have to start scaling back your practice sessions. And going into the nationals, I had to withdraw because I would go up into a jump, land, and have this sharp shooting pain, and then just kind of collapse.
When you had to withdraw, did you cry? Did you insist that you could go?
I was at nationals when I withdrew. So I went to the practices and withdrew before the competition because I was not able to train. I was not landing the jumps I needed to. I was making it worse. And it was just like it's the most frustrating thing when your body doesn't cooperate with you. And something that I experienced later in my career at my 2006 Olympics, not to the same extent, but sports and bodies are not always in agreement. And then you're in your mind and you're like, did my body not cooperate with my mind, or did my mind not cooperate with my body? And it just, in sports, you're never good enough and you can always be better and you're always trying to be ahead of your competitor. So when your body fails you, I think it's really hard to figure out how to process that.
So in a generalized sense, always, no matter what you're going to pursue, something's going to fail you along the way. And you have to kind of overcome that to really achieve, to be the best.
And what's so painful about the Olympics is you have a few minute window every 4 years and you just hope that it's right. It's not like you can say, oh, hold on, I'll record this performance or do this later and send it in at my peak. You just have to hope. It's like, the eclipse, that it happens at the right time for you when the Olympics is there.
We're going to get to the 2006 Olympics, believe me. But I'm just curious again, the first time, so you're sitting there, your back's broken, and you didn't answer the question. Did you cry when you withdrew from the nationals when you realized you couldn't do it?
I'm sure I cried. I think early on I learned to put up walls and not let people see how I felt. I had a press conference and it's, you're trained at such a young age, so you're going to try your best and you still believe that next year you can make the Olympic team and this is what you need to do. But you hold yourself together. But I remember just watching people compete, earning spots on the world team, and just being crushed that I wasn't there. And then there's just doubt that sits with you. How will I be able to keep up? And how will I be able to get everything back that I need to get a spot next year?
Yeah, right. Because not only how were you able to keep up, but then still exceed everyone else? How were you able to do that? Like when you first went back to the ice, were you scared?
I wasn't scared. I think I was trying to be smart because I'd seen people that come back too soon and then they are set back for another 4 months. And I just didn't have the time for that. So I played it a little safe and took a little extra time and came back in slowly. And then I just trained my ass off. I was in physical therapy, Pilates, ballet, skating, off ice. It was just from morning until night. And then I would come home and watch the videos that my mom would record of my jumps and my program and see, I don't like that. I don't like where my arm is, or that's the reason I'm not getting enough height. And just relentlessly pursuing and just counting down the days.
So in terms of like strengthening your back, what helped the most out of all these different things you were doing?
Core
So, like,
supports your
Pilates?
back. So Pilates, and I had specific exercises in physical therapy. Also keeping your sacrum aligned, because every time you fall badly, you kind of knock your hip out of whack, and then you put more compression in your spine. So strengthening my core was the single most important thing into supporting my back.
And you could really feel the difference from, over time from strengthening your core.
Because your body has to brace, right? When you fall and from impact, something has to hold you together. And if you don't have a strong core, then other parts of your body take the brunt of that.
With ice skating, I sort of see it as one of those skills where it's divided up into lots of micro skills. So there's the jumps, there's the dancing, there's the contortion type stuff that you mentioned.
Musicality, artistry.
Dancing, yeah. How many micro skills do you think there were? Because it seems like to be the best in the world, you have to be the best at each one of those, or at least most of them.
You don't necessarily have to be the best at each one, but it's the cumulative package. And I think a lot of it is performing under pressure And a lot of it is just continuing to believe and fight even when everything looks impossible.
So you've brought that up a couple of times, like the psychological aspect. So what you're sort of saying is, at that level, assume everybody has kind of mastered the basic micro skills of jumping, dancing, artistry, whatever. How important then is the psychology in any high stakes moment? Because you have high stakes moments now, even in your current job and career. In any high stakes moment, how important is the psychology versus, assuming the basic micro skills?
Controlling your emotions and your mind is of utmost performance. Obviously, people are coming in with different levels of talent and capability and technical difficulty. But if you don't perform, if you make 3 mistakes, then someone that's not as good as you that skates a clean performance is going to place ahead of you. And so it's going out to a huge ice rink all alone. No one can go with you, not your coach, not your mom, not anyone that you've trained with. And you know that you have a few minutes, and on the other side of it, your life is going to be different. And there's no doing over. And so to sit with the enormity of what that means is very difficult. And the only way to do it, I think, is starting from a young age, and more pressure is just normal.
How would you do it though? Like, let's say before the 2006 short program, what were you kind of hypnotizing yourself, or what do peak performing athletes do at that moment?
You keep control of your mind. Your mind wants to say, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I make a mistake? How am I going to do it? It feels impossible. I'm skating last. There's all this pressure. I've waited 4 years. And you can very easily go down this tangent, but you have to bring yourself back.
How?
And it's self-talk. It's positive self-talk. Being, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I'm going to do this. I can. And then you just keep it very focused on the next task. All I have to do right now is get up my jump rope and warm up. Then all I have to do is, you have your routine. Then I do my abs, and then I jog, and then I stretch, and then I get on the bike.
Because if you're thinking too much, like, oh my gosh, if I fall 3 times, then this is you don't think about that. You just think about,
you just really try to keep yourself present.
What about the second before you're going on the ice?
I think everyone has different routines and mental preparations, but it's just this deep breath, the enormity of what's about to happen. And then luckily you have the music. So I would always lose myself in the music. So you go and you take that opening pose, you hear your name, and then the music starts, and then you can kind of get lost in the music. And then your voice is like this step, 3 turn, mohawk, crossover, breathe in, out, exhale, jump, So you're really guiding it with markers as you go.
I'm going to get a little more into that when we talk about 2006 in just a minute, but I'm just curious about your opinion. What do you think of the so-called 10,000 hour rule, where if you spend, it's by Ericsson, Malcolm Gladwell's written about it, but the idea is if you spend 10,000 hours working at a skill, you could become among the best in the world at that skill. What's your gut feeling on that?
I think it's definitely true, but that doesn't mean that you're going to do it when the time counts.
Right, because of the psychological aspect. You don't think the 10,000 hours can help part of the micro skills? You're sort of separating out always that the psychology is not really part of the micro skills of that skill.
It's a different skill. The psychology is a different skill.
It's just a totally different skill. And like, how do you use the methods that by which you got great at ice skating and the methods by which you got great at the psychology? How do you use them in your current career, let's say in the investment world?
I think in the investment world and in life, what you realize is that 9 days out of 10, you may doubt yourself and you may not feel good, but you have to keep showing up and you have to keep putting in the work. And then ultimately over time, that shows itself. And you also get to know your own insecurities and your own thought patterns. And then you can kind of discount them because that's not necessarily representative of reality. I'm a perfectionist. I always doubt that what I'm doing is good enough, or if I'm going to be as prepared as I could be. And so I recognize what my patterns are. And so I think when you see your thought patterns and your tendencies as a child in sport, at the Olympics, preparing for a presentation, figuring out what I'm going to do with my life, preparing for a final at school, I recognize that in me, that it's never enough. It's never good enough. And so everyone has a different framework.
And I've heard you mention a couple times what I am guessing is your insecurities right now, which is that when you were young, so all you did was ice skating, basically, up until the time you were in the Olympics, essentially. And now you've mentioned it even right before this podcast. It was 10. You're 10 years older than everyone else pursuing this career, or the type of career you have right now. And probably you didn't have the chance. Probably you feel like, oh my gosh, they were all being obsessive at the age of 15 about this career while you were off ice skating. How can you catch up and exceed? Where do you feel? How do you take kind of the meta skill set of learning ice skating and the psychology and apply it now to the career and dealing with those insecurities, which I'm guessing is what your insecurities are?
Well, I think what I learned in skating is you put in the work and to persevere, and that you can get good at anything if you put in the time and you have the discipline and the tenacity. And those are skills that I continue to apply when I'm learning a completely new topic.
So what if you're persevering something you're not going to get good at?
Well, how do you know you're not going to get good at it?
Like, what if you tried to learn, I don't know, the piano right now? I mean, I guess perseverance, you feel you can get good at it.
I guess I would never be concert pianist ability, but I think anything that you really put time into, you have a huge runway for improvement.
And what else do you need? You need a mentor or a coach?
I think you need a lot of curiosity, and you need to be relentless, and it needs to matter to you. And so you do it at the sacrifice of other things. And that's what I did with skating. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't pursue anything else. And it was all ice skating. I thought, how do I become the best at this? And what are the supporting activities I need to do? And I found a sports psychologist, and I would journal, and I would watch videos of the best skaters, watch videos of myself and compare. And so I think you can do that with other things in life. And I think I do that now in trying to keep up with the world. I'm always listening to some informative book on Audible or a podcast or reading. There's no second that I'm not trying to ingest information, connect dots, and elevate myself.
And it seems like you focus, and this is like a natural thing, but you focus obviously on the things that you're enthusiastic about. So what if someone's listening to this and they're 40 years old and they're a little unhappy with where they are in life or what their job is or where their career is taking them, and they're looking for a change? How does somebody find what they're enthusiastic about? Like, obviously when you were young, you kind of stumbled into it, almost literally. And then you kind of figured it out as you were older. But how does someone figure that out?
I think patience, turning over a lot of stones. You're not going to know what you're interested in until you try a bunch of different things. And, I've been reading books, from like physics on Richard Feynman to Bad Blood and understanding how Theranos fell apart. And so from a business level, from a scientific perspective, I'm always learning. And again, liberal arts was my love, philosophy and poetry, and I was a political science major. So the science aspect is all very new for me, but I'm understanding how helpful it is and how absolutely instrumental it is in the world we live in today.
So you're enthusiastic about it, and maybe you got that way by kind of randomly finding books that people would recommend, or
exactly a lot
podcasts.
Of times books that I heard recommended on podcasts, and then as soon as I hear it, I immediately write it down into my notes, and then I would get a sample of it, and if I liked it, I would continue and read it.
What would you feel? Would you feel like this excitement, like you would start connecting ideas from other, like what would excitement look like to you? What would it feel like?
I think I'm an insanely curious person, and I think that was a lot of the reason I was hired for the current role that I'm in. Is I ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions, and I'm constantly putting together different mental models and trying to connect dots, because I'm a generalist and I'm not a specialist, and so I'm trying to see things at a higher level. But I love learning, and I love whether it's traveling and meeting new people or understanding just the kind of the breakdown of all the worlds that exist within physics. And so I think you feel excited when you're learning something new, and whether that's through a person or through a book or an experience, you should have this sense of excitement and this feeling of expansion.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. Oracle.com/advance.
Among, not necessarily your peers, but just among people in general, when they want to learn something, how do you see from your experience learning ice skating and getting to be essentially the best in the world at something that's very important to millions of people? When you see other people learning, do you ever see to yourself, oh, they're learning it wrong, or they're learning it not the way I would learn it? Because you've got this experience of learning how to be the best in the world at something. Like what extra thing did you learn about being the best in the world, something that other people, that you could maybe tell other people, hey, do it this way, learn this way?
Within skating or in general?
No, in general. Because you learned, not many people learn how to be the best in the world at something. So there's some extra quality of how you learn things. What do you, and if you look at somebody who's learning something, can you see, they're not quite doing it the way I would do it because I've got this experience from when I was 12 that gave me that extra push?
So first of all, everyone does things in a different way because people have different bodies, different minds, different levels of endurance, and that's fine. But what you need is to be obsessive, and it's not healthy because you do something, to be great at something, it's at the expense of something and usually everything else. And so it's the unhealthy, obsessive quality where it's so easy to just not have friends, to not be social, to put everything into one thing. It's that obsessiveness, which I think is what creates greatness.
And because the obsessiveness is also going to give you kind of the time and energy to look at the videos of your prior performances, think of all the micro skills that you need to learn, look at all your competitors, look at all the opportunities coming up to perform or whatever.
It's your fuel. It's your fuel. It's my mind
and
never
not everyone's
turned
going to be
off.
obsessive. So this is almost like your competitive edge as you're reinventing yourself to the investment world, for instance.
Exactly. It's whatever, I think whatever you're obsessive about, whatever means more to you than anything else is where you will put your time.
And do you think everybody can find something to be obsessive about, or do you think some people are just not going to get to that level of obsession?
I think it's a choice because that doesn't necessarily bring happiness, and people have different goals. So I think we all start with a fundamental, like the hierarchy. We want to find happiness, and people have different routes to happiness. It can be power, it can be fame, it can be money, it can be greatness, it can be family, love, experiences. So whatever way you're wired will inform the way that you choose to spend your time.
Right. So my guess is you're more willing to be obsessive.
I'm more obsessively wired, unfortunately.
So how does that affect, I'm going on a tangent, but let's just say your romantic relationships. How does it affect you being obsessive about something and your boyfriend's like, wait, come on, we got to go. Like, what do you do?
It's very much, it's like, why are you so focused on this? It's just kind of been relentless, but I don't know. I think you kind of accept who people are in relationships. It either works for you to have someone you like that about them. You like their ambition, their drive, the way they are in the world. And if that doesn't work for you, then you probably have to find a different partner.
Did you have situations where you had a partner where they thought they could do that, but then realized they couldn't?
So I've kind of had opposite examples where I'm recently divorced and I was also in a relationship before that didn't work out. But it's been challenging for me to go from a world where I didn't date. I spent most of my time with my mom, most of my time with my coach, focused on skating in an ice rink, tired, cold, hungry. And, dating was the farthest thing from my mind. And I really learned my love was ice skating. And so everything was for ice skating. And so I think I'm still learning how to do that in a relationship because I wasn't on a team. I wasn't as a pair. And it's a different psychology you develop as an individual athlete where even your own emotions and your development as a person is not anywhere as important as your success as an ice skater. And so when I finished skating, when I moved to New York, went to Columbia, traveled, just constantly explored, met new people outside of the world of sports, I'm learning to kind of take down the walls and learning to unlearn 20 years of experiences that made me a good ice skater.
I mean, that might be a factor of age too, and you're also in a more social kind of career than ice skating, so now those walls are coming down. But
we're adaptable, right? So I adapted my mind, my psychology, my habits to be the best ice skater. So that's different than what you need to live in New York City or to be a student or to have a job, or to be in a romantic relationship. These are different skills you need to learn. So I'm going to get back to that. I'm always going to get back to different things. 2006, I just want to, you won the silver medal, which is unbelievable, of course. You're second best person in the world at a sport that millions of people love. But does silver just suck? Because obviously everybody's only going for the gold. That's very true. I think for me, it was one of the hardest experiences of my life because, again, going back to the body being fickle, 3 months before I was at the top of my game, skating perfectly. I felt like I owned the world. A few months later, injured, I had equipment problems, I had to take time off, I got sick. By the time I got to the Olympics, I had ionophoresis, which is like a steroid treatment 3 times a day. I was starting to make mistakes. I wasn't able to do run-throughs of my program, and I was not prepared. And how devastating it was to go into the most important event of my life, the second Olympic Games, that I had painstakingly white-knuckled my way through the last 2 years of training, which was very difficult, and to get there and not feel prepared in the way that you wanted to be.
So let me ask. So I watched just last night the short program, and you did perfectly.
That was all bravado, and I call it walking the pirate's plank. That was the first program that I'd done like that in 3 weeks because my training was abysmal going into that. And just psychologically, that wrecks you, but you have to still fight. It's like you're one person going out against 100 people, but you just have to just go yelling, screaming, kicking, fighting. And that's what you have to take with you, even though you know that the odds are against you.
But looking at your face right before the program started, and maybe this is bravado or not, but you looked happy, you looked confident. Is this part of the self-talk at that time? What were you saying to yourself at that moment?
Fake it till you make it. You wear a mask. You put on the demeanor that you need to have. You can't go into battle with doubt. So whether it comes from a place of honesty or not, you learn to pull something out deep within. And again, it's that charging, fighting, yelling, screaming, going into battle.
What were you saying at exactly that moment?
So my memory isn't great, but I probably would have said something along the lines of you can do this, you're going to do this, you're the best. And you just you try to find that fire, that fighter inside. And then you kind of let that go and you let the music take you.
So midway through, things are going perfectly. You've done these incredible jumps. You're doing the artistry is incredible. Does your brain ever leak in the sense that you start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to win this? Do you start thinking ahead and you still have 5 more jumps to go?
You don't, because you know that it's precarious, right? So I think you don't have this moment of relief until all your jumps are done. And then even then you want to be careful not to be careless and fall on footwork or a spin. But you have an immense sense of relief, and then you can enjoy where you are. You can enjoy all the years of training, the millions of people watching, knowing your family's in the crowd. You can focus on how much the love that you had when you were a child that you don't really see in the day-to-day because of the pressure and the expectations. And then that comes out.
But halfway through, that's at the end when it's boom, you're first, you did everything great. That was like a perfect program.
You usually have maybe a minute when most of the hard things are out of the way. And in the short program, my 3 jumps were roughly in the first half. And then it was a spin and a spiral sequence and footwork. And it just, I felt like I was on fire. And it was this incredible 60 or 90 seconds of, holy shit, I am on top of the world. I did this. This is incredible. It's just, it's a high that I've never had before.
So now let's go to the long program. In the first 30 seconds, you fell twice. But before the long program started, your face looked completely different. You didn't really look.
You've been listening to the commentators.
I was listening to the commentator. But I also was just noticing the face and the difference between the short program and the long. You were in a frown as opposed to smiling. At the same time that the commentator was saying you had in your trial run or whatever, you weren't doing as
in the
perfectly.
warm-up, I'd fallen. And I think when you go into a short program, you have 2 things ahead of you, and the long is weighted much more than the short program. So it's almost a start, whereas the long program is this finality. And I didn't get to practice the day before because of my injury. I didn't practice that morning, which is unheard of. And so I didn't feel prepared. But again, it's summon the strength. I'm not ready, but I'm going to pretend that I am, and I'm going to go out and fight. But I felt that. I felt, aside the normal pressure that anyone would feel going into their last Olympic Games, I had everything else of not having the preparation and being injured. And so when I fell on my first jump, it was like the wind knocked out of me, a dream dissolving, the audience just, and no time to process that, but get up and go into the next thing.
And you still have 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, not 4 minutes to go, but it's literally, you have to get up and keep going. And a lot of times when people miss a few things, you start missing a lot of things. You give up hope. All you want to do is get yourself off that ice. And I just kept bringing the sense of resiliency, the continual fight. Like everything was a fight, everything I went into. And thankfully, it somewhat clicked. I don't know how it did because it felt like my world had just fallen apart.
What do you mean everything clicked? You were able to complete the program?
I was able to get back into it. So considering I wasn't prepared and I was injured and I missed 2 things, the fact that I was able to get it back together and complete the rest of the elements, which ultimately ended up earning me a medal, that is somewhat miraculous. And that took something very deep within.
I can't pronounce the name of the woman who won.
Shizuka Arakawa.
So did it help her that you went first? Because after you kind of fell the 2 times, she was able to kind of ignore the artistry and just make sure she landed every jump in order to beat you.
She made mistakes too, and basically everyone made a few mistakes that night. But, she had a different style. She is a very talented skater, but she wasn't as emotive and expressive. And everyone has a different, unique style in skating. And I think that's kind of what makes it such a wonderful sport, is you can see personalities shine through. So no one had the night they wanted to have. And luckily, because everyone messed up, I was still on the podium. A girl, Irina Slutskaya, who messed up quite a bit, also made the podium right below me. Whereas if this was another Olympic Games and everyone had given perfect performances, we would not have been on the podium.
So the day after, when you wake up and you have the silver, which is this amazing accomplishment.
There was no sleeping. We were in Italy, so we were ahead, and we immediately went to start doing shows and media and the morning circuit. And every interview would replay my falls and basically probe me until I cried, and then the interview would stop. And that was my next few hours. And then it was immediately into practice because we have an exhibition. And it's just pushing yourself through, but you're numb and it's so much pain, but you don't want to feel it. So you just start to try to push it down. And everyone you see just tells you how heartbroken they are for you and how could you do that? And you just kind of smile and learn to pivot the conversation. But it's there was many, many years of having to compress that and put that down, but it was rough.
And so after that, you had spent all your life, of course, pursuing this one dream, not to kind of keep rehashing this horrible thing for you. And then obviously you find great joy and happiness in reinvention and reinventing your career. When did you realize, okay, I'm going to have to now try to be the best in the world at something new, and then again at something new, because you've reinvented a couple of times? I mean, you were an actress, you were trying to have a fashion line, and now you're on Wall Street.
I think I'm relentlessly curious and always trying to find where I fit and find my passion and to be exploring. And so the first thing that I did was decide to go to school. And it was the greatest gift that I gave myself, and I gave myself permission that there wasn't a purpose behind it. I wasn't becoming the best at something. I wasn't visible, but I was ready. I was so curious. I was spending all my free time in the public library when I wasn't touring. And so I was at the age of 25, I knew I was ready to go to school, and I knew I wanted to live in New York. And so I applied to NYU in Columbia. And I came, and it was the greatest gift that I gave myself. And I could just be a person. I didn't have to be a figure.
Although were your classmates intimidated a little bit? Like, oh my God.
No, I was Alex. My legal name's Alexandra. I was Alex. No one knew who I was. And it was wonderful to be a person and not have to be a skater that somebody knew, or that there were expectations in the next season and you're not good enough and this person's better. And I could just take philosophy and take poetry and history and be a person. I allowed myself to be a person, and I think that was incredibly transformative. And then that was the time when most people are in middle school or high school and writing for the school newspaper or interning and figuring out what they wanted to be. That's when I started to start putting the pieces together.
How did you decide that finance was going to be the thing that you would do?
So I think, from the age of 16, I started following the price of gold, and I would always watch CNBC. And
why would you follow the price of gold? Is that because you wanted a gold medal?
No, I was just competitive.
How much is my medal going to be worth?
No. I think I was always trying to figure out what can I sell and how can I compete. And I loved the energy and what was projected of what finance was. It was, it was elbowing. It's who's smarter. How are you going to? It was something that could be measured. And for some reason that really appealed to me. From a young age, I would buy stuff and try to sell it. I would sell my sister's toy soldiers. I was always trying to figure out how to make money. Yeah, she was very upset. She's still upset. And I think I love that competitive aspect, and also the people. I love to be around very ambitious, competitive, intellectual people. And I've found that. But what I didn't realize is that I also have an incredibly creative side that loves the arts. And so I'm backfilling that in other ways in my life. But skating, I got to do everything. I got to be competitive. I got to be artistic. I had a platform to speak, and I got to, to push myself technically as an athlete. And it's very hard to find something where you can do that again. So
you mentioned earlier there are many ways people find happiness, whether it's success or financially or fame or whatever. What do you feel is your route to happiness at this point?
I'm still finding it, but I think that I've realized that I may not find something that's as obsessive as skating was for me. And that's probably a good thing. And for me, I was a big fish in a small pond when I continued to tour. And at the end, I started to feel like a monkey in the circus. And I was living in the bowels of an arena, and it was Groundhog Day every day. And I didn't want to live like that. And I was ready to be nobody and to be a tadpole in the ocean and just take it all in. So instead of giving out, I wanted to take in. And I'm still figuring out the way that I can convert that into putting out again. But I think I've just been in a phase where I'm intaking so much information, but it's balance. So I think the key right now for me is balance.
Well, and I think also one thing you've done that's been so incredibly helpful is so many Olympians get depressed afterwards. They don't know how to come back after such heights as representing their country, in, the most famous sporting event in history, and showing how that you can reinvent and have a fulfilling life with many outcomes, that you don't have to be obsessed about any one of them. I think that probably helps a lot of people, and I know that's kind of a message you share to people.
Exactly, and I've written about that for the New York Times and Sports Illustrated, and I'm actually collaborating on a documentary that is going to be released soon called The Weight of Gold, which Michael Phelps is in and a lot of other athletes, and it goes into the issues of depression and trying to find yourself after. But I think what athletes forget is the sacrifice and the pressure and the weight of the world that they had, and the fact that they couldn't develop themselves and all these other things as a person. So yes, these moments of greatness and meaning and purpose that come at the Olympic Games, and that sense of everything you're directing when you're training. But it is so wonderful when you can travel and not have to be at the rink on Christmas, or doing sprints on the track on the 4th of July when all your friends and your family are at the beach, and you can learn about different things and you can live life. Like, the world is so big, and if you allow yourself to put aside the career in sports and that identity and say it's okay that I'm nobody now and I'm putting the pieces together and be a person, it's an incredible world to do that in. So it's, again, different metrics for happiness and success, but there's more to do than we'll ever have time to do, and I think that's the attitude to have.
Well, Sasha Cohen, world famous ice skater, now on Wall Street, done many other things. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast and talking about all this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm slowly putting the pieces together, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And good luck on all future endeavors.
Thank you. Likewise.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.